Today we are responding to your YouTube comments.
First question, what lady Rolex sells for the biggest premium? Either the Tiffany dial Oyster Perpetual or the Celebration dial.
Yeah.
In 36mm, we would buy or consign them for at least double the retail price.
What is the better go anywhere, do anything watch? The Aqua Terra or the Datejust? So you've got the steel sporty watch from Omega and from Rolex. I would say it depends. It's a couple of things. One is the price point.
Yeah.
The Datejust is a little bit more than the Aqua Terra. Two is the style. So a Datejust you can get on an oyster or a Jubilee bracelet, but an Aqua Terra you can get on a steel bracelet, you can get on leather, and I believe you can get on rubber as well.
Yeah.
So it depends if you what aesthetic you prefer. In terms of value, what do you think about that?
The difference is one's a Rolex and one's not. I think going forward, you'll always have a better resale value of a Rolex. But at the same time, you can't walk into Rolex and choose whichever one you want.
And the other thing is, from a watchmaking standpoint, the Aqua Terra is no less of a watch than the Datejust. You know,
No, not at all.
In terms of the movement, the specification, the water resistance, the experience of wearing one, you know, it's no lesser of a watch, it's just a difference in branding. Also, there's quite a few people who will prefer the aesthetic of the Aqua Terra.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking for value, great watchmaking, and you like the look, go with the Aqua Terra. If you want maybe some more brand status, along with better value retention, and you also prefer the look of the Rolex, go with the Datejust.
I would agree. I think the rubber strap, the factory rubber strap that will come with an Omega is cool. I think the Aqua Terra is probably a bit more modern. So personal choice again. Next question, where do you think the bluesy will be in 2024? Will it still be creeping up slowly in price? So again, I think Rolex will increase their price once or twice next year. I think over the last couple of years, the price is probably caught up with the value to some extent, or at least got a lot closer.
Yeah. So the difference between RRP and what they sell for on the market, the gap is tightened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Let's say that they used to cost sort of 11 or 12,000 out of Rolex. We've probably sold them for 18 or 19,000 in the last year or two, and I think now the list price is just over 13,000. You'll get a brand new 2023 model for between 15 and 16,000. So yeah, that gap's closed, and you can look at that whatever way you want. It's better value, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I think if you look back in history, two-tone watches were watches that would sit in the window,
Yeah.
compared to the steel ones.
Yeah.
The bluesy is probably one of the most iconic two-tone watches.
Definitely.
You know, it's been in some form. It has been in the Rolex catalog for a long time. So, you know, and I think it's got good staying power. You know, you still get a lot of customers who want the bluesy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's been a watch they've always wanted for a long time.
Well,
you know, it could be, again, it's a really good collection watch, I think. You know, if you've got a steel Datejust and that was your first Rolex, the bluesy's a great second
everybody
Rolex. I think,
recognises that watch for
Definitely.
what it is and being a Rolex.
How do you see the Skydweller range in the current market? He's talking about all the dials, the bimetal ones too. Are they up or down? Well, I think the current leaders in the Skydweller range would be something like this, which is a steel Jubilee. I just realised that I've pulled the watches out there. With
No,
all
I was just saying if there was another one. Go on.
all right, fair enough.
Me.
So this is probably the poster boy of the Skydweller at the minute. This is the Jubilee bracelet steel. This is is it a 1-3 reference, I want to say?
A 3-3.
A 3-3, right? And this has got the mint green dial. So this was new for 2023.
Yeah.
And what's the market price on something like this at the moment?
Around £25,000.
So significantly above retail.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's the current leader of the pack in terms of steel and probably in terms of market premium.
Definitely.
But, you know, what is the story with the steel and golds at the moment?
I think the price point from Rolex is very high, and that's not going to change. It'll go up once or twice again next year, and I think the market value is probably around those sort of figures. So
Yeah.
I think before long, you'll see them in the window. I think with the full precious metal models, the price point now, like £36,000 for an Oyster Flex. If you compare that to an Oyster Flex Yachtmaster or an Oyster Flex Daytona, it's significantly more, and you do see those watches in the window now.
Yeah. They're actually a watch that you can pick up under list, right?
Oh,
like I know
massively.
you offered a gentleman came in and he looked at a yellow gold one on Oyster Flex, and it was something like £8,000 under the list price, and it was brand new as well, wasn't it?
Last week, 2023 model, we sold for 8,000 under the list price. I think with steel models, you can't really go wrong. Obviously, the green and blues more popular than the black and white. But Rolex keep the numbers limited because they use them as tools to sell their precious metal watches. I think the blue is very good value now. It's still a very sought after watch, but I think the greens overtook it in demand and popularity.
So if you're trying to get that watch from the AD, how hard is it to get? Like from the people that you speak to, would you say, is it up there with a Pepsi or a Daytona in steel?
I would say in green and blue, it's probably harder to get than a lot of the GMT models, and I would only, ahead of that, I would only put a steel Daytona with the ceramic bezel. And obviously they've just brought a new one of those out. But they're very clever in how many full steel sports models they release with the sought after models. So you won't see that.
They seem to be like always kind of the trophy at the end of the journey, aren't they? You know, they want their big customers are buying and buying and buying in hope of getting that steel model. It's bizarre, really.
If they can get people to spend hundreds of thousands before they spend 12 or 13,000 on a watch, then it's very clever business.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump on this next one, which is, are there any micro brands that you see becoming the next big thing? Now, I would say that the watch trader team, like they don't buy or sell micro brands, right? So it's not really in the area of expertise. That question's probably something for Hendo, so maybe we can ask that one on there.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's just so difficult to get into the luxury watch market from a standing start.
Well, I think that you're competing with brands that have heritage, sometimes a few hundred years. And, you know, if you come along and you're trying to create a luxury brand, you're just not going to have that heritage from the get-go. And I think when people buy a luxury watch, they do like that story that, you know, they like that people of note have wore the watches in the past.
Yeah, well, that's it.
And the brand has a rich history,
It's just like any sort of exclusive brand, really. I think if you look at watches at the £500 price point or even the £1,000, you might see ones that become popular, but I think it also depends on the other people wearing them.
Actually, a brand that I do quite like the look of their watches, right, and I don't know so much about the watchmaking, is Christopher Ward. I really like the designs of those. I think they're very clean, so maybe one to look at.
With Christopher Ward, what I find is I see a lot of people with very expensive watch collections, and they've always got a Christopher Ward, so that says a lot to me.
I think that some of their watches are quite inspired. Some people will see that as a good thing, some people will see that as a bad thing, but I think some of the colours, some of the designs, just like clean and classy, you know. But like you say, you get people who have like full precious metal Daytonas, but when they like go on holiday or they go camping or something like that, they've got a Christopher Ward on. So we've seen a couple of those.
Which watch would you guess Eddie Howe wears? So Eddie Howe, of course, is the manager of Newcastle United Football Club, and what I think is he would wear something simple and practical, inexpensive. So when we were reading this question, we had a look, and sure enough, he wears an Apple Watch.
An Apple Watch. Fair enough. Okay, so this fella says, I'm after a 2023 Datejust 41, and it's a motif dial, okay, so in steel. Just wants it for special occasions. What do you predict the value will be in 5 years? Well, I would say with the Datejust 41, okay, we can assume that every single year Rolex will increase the RRP. Yeah. So if you look in 5 years' time, the watch that you have is going to seem relatively inexpensive compared to what it'll cost to buy it again in 5 years' time, right? So I would say it's going to hold its value.
I also think that a motif dial, there's less of them about. They're more sought after. They'll always be easier to sell at a premium, so it's a very good choice. I don't know how easy it'll be to walk into Rolex and get that as your first watch. Obviously, you can buy them in the market at a premium, but they're a cool watch. So this one says, do you think that vintage watches will pick up some of the slack now that the market is slowing down? So I think the question here is, are vintage watches as a proportion of watches bought and sold, is that sector increasing compared to modern stuff with the current market? What I've found over the last couple of months is we've sourced some fantastic vintage watches. The market, there's probably not as many bought and sold, but there's some great value to be had in vintage watches. The other thing is, over the last three years, when prices have been very sort of up and down, that probably hasn't been the case as much with vintage watches, where they've always sort of steadily increased. So they're probably more solid if you wanted to speculate what they might be worth in the future.
I think that's it. They're less susceptible to trends, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, the blue dial's the hottest one at the moment. Oh no, now the green dial is this, or now the Wimbledon dial is. You know, these vintage watches are already sometimes 40, 50 years old. And they're kind of sick. So we've got one here. This is a Datejust. I think this
1970s.
70s Datejust. So how much would something like this be retail from a grey market dealer?
We would be selling it probably anywhere from between 3,000 and 4,000, depending on the condition, if it has papers. I also think with vintage watches, there's a lot of it to do with nostalgia, or maybe the year you were born, or if you maybe couldn't afford one 20, 30 years ago.
Are they more popular or more frequently bought and sold in the market currently? Probably not.
Probably not, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on applying a protective film on watches to prevent scratches? I just think it's a bad idea. I think initially it'll look good for a day or two, but I think as soon as they get any dirt or moisture on them, they just look grubby.
Yeah, it seems a shame, right, that that's such a nicely finished object, and then you're covering it up in plastic. Plus, I think because they don't actually cover every single bit of the watch surface, you would end up with little scratches on the parts that it doesn't cover. So if your idea is that you want to keep the watch completely mint but also be able to wear it, I don't think you're going to achieve that anyway.
I think more people put stickers on their watch because they really think that they can wear it for 6 months and then sell it to someone like us as an unworn watch, and in reality that's never the case.
Need a bit WD-40 on that door. So this person says, I have a 2021 Rolex Oyster Perpetual Tiffany 41mm full set, original receipt. I'm thinking of letting it go. How much would you expect to get for it now in the current market?
So I think 18 months ago we were selling those watches for nearly £30,000. Currently what I'm finding with watches that people buy or sell for significantly more than what they cost, new watches, I think they're the most difficult to sell, because I think when they're going up in value and they're appreciating, that's when people want to buy them, because they buy them potentially for an investment. I think now they've got further to fall. Considering they cost £5,000, somebody to spend 20,000 on it.
The difference is with the 41mm Tiffany though, is that you actually can't buy a new one now because that's discontinued.
But I still think people aren't prepared to pay 3 or 4 times for the cost of a watch, although they can't buy it anyway. I just think it's got further to fall if the market was to be further in decline. For reference, if I was offered one this afternoon, I would bid 13,000 to buy and 15,000 on consignment. That watch might be worth more than that, but the facts are, for what I can buy for between 13 and 15,000 to sell on, I don't think I'm going to sell a Tiffany OP anytime soon in 41mm. Whereas if I was spending that money on a Hulk or a Pepsi or a Batman, anything that we're offered now in the price that we quote is probably also based on how long it's going to take to sell.
Yeah,
like we sold nearly 200 watches last month, and I think that, like, if the type of watch was something like a Tiffany OP, then they wouldn't sell. When we look at any of the sports models that I've just mentioned, we probably sold 5 or 6 at least of most of those models.
Okay, so I've got a full rose 116505, so a full ever rose gold Daytona with the chocolate dial. How do you see the future value? So this is the previous generation, because the chocolate dial, I believe, is recently discontinued this year. It was always the most sought after dial in a rose gold Daytona, but the good thing about it is, with the new models, there's no direct replacement, so there's no chocolate or brown dial, and the new ones are quite different. So I think that the market is probably down because there's a slightly better model out, because it's a £40,000 approximate value. But I think as time goes on, and I think as the market and
economy and consumer confidence increases, I think that's when I think that watch will be a good one for the future.
Yeah, because it was a very aesthetically pleasing watch.
Yeah, it was, I think.
And that was probably why it was the most popular.
I think the chocolate dial and the rose gold worked very well.
Yeah, I think two things there. If they re-release a chocolate dial and a new reference, that may have an effect. And secondly, though, the question I have for you is the full precious metal Daytona the only model that is still trading like at quite a premium? Because as we know, the Sky Dweller, that one's trading under list.
Yeah.
Day dates, a lot of them I think, are slightly under list. Full yellow gold Submariners and GMTs, slightly under. So what is the Daytona still a one that trades above?
Yes, not all of them though.
Yeah.
I think probably that one. I think obviously the green dial John Mayer Daytona, but a lot of yellow gold ones probably aren't.
Right.
The lesser popular rose gold models, so the black, the pink, shimmery sort of Sundust style, that would be less as well, I'd say. So it just depends, really.
I have a 2023 Submariner Bluesy. Do you think I should swap it for a 2023 Rootbeer or hold on to the Bluesy? So I think there's two ways of looking at this. If you're talking about which one we think would hold the most value, they're probably very similar. The other way to look at it is, well, which one do you prefer aesthetically? Which one is going to make you happier when you see it on your wrist? John, could you share a bit of insight as to which one is selling the most at the moment at Watch Trader?
So last month, and probably the same for the last 6 months, we probably sold 10 bimetal Rootbeers, maybe 2 or 3 bluesies.
Okay.
I think the price point between the two watches, the Rootbeer is going to be around £2,000 more than the bluesy for a similar, well, for the same age. So it just depends. Rose gold, and that being a little bit more subtle than the yellow gold with a bright blue dial, it's probably more fashionable at the moment. I think in the past, I think it's seasonal as well. I think that's more of a summer watch than that. But they're both very good watches, and I think you've still, I know we say this a lot, but I would go with personal choice.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. I think you've made some good points there. I mean, the only other thing I could point out is, the Bluesy, because this configuration has been out for a lot longer, maybe not in the ceramic, but, going back.
Yeah.
Whereas the Rootbeer, that came out in, 2018?
Yes.
I want to say something like that.
There has been variations of it in the past, just not as
right.
popular. You see an awful lot more older vintage bluesies than you will Rootbeers.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. It really is just about the one you like, but I do think you're correct there that rose gold is maybe a little bit more on trend at the moment. So this person says, I have a 2002 GMT-Master II, the 16710. This is the black bezel oyster bracelet. It's had a Rolex service. The person's wondering, should I keep it? I've been looking at a steel Submariner date ceramic. What do you think? He's had that watch from new, has the full set. What do we think? This one is interesting. I pulled this out because this is actually a GMT Master. I believe this is a 16700.
So this is an older one, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it's slightly older, but it also has the Rolex stickers. So when you see a watch that has the stickers on it, it has the blue stripes like that, that usually indicates that it's come back from a Rolex service. So this one hasn't been worn since it's come back. So the watch they're talking about here, though, is the GMT-Master II. This is a GMT Master. So yeah, what would you do, John? If you had this watch, but you were thinking about getting a Submariner ceramic, what do you think?
I think if he was just looking to sell it and he didn't need to, or he didn't have other plans, then I would say not to. I also think at the moment, though, with the part exchange, because the market is down for everything, if you're swapping one watch for another, whether you're swapping up or down and there's money involved in either direction, I think that's fine, because you're getting less for your watch, but you're then getting good value in the new watch. So yeah. I think if it was just a case of selling it, then it's not the right time to sell an older watch. It's not the right time to sell any watch if you don't need to, when you can maybe keep it for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. But it's speculation, it's personal circumstances.
Yeah, I think, the person in question says that they've owned it from new. That might have a little bit of waiting, if maybe you'd have a little bit of regret if you sold it and then you're getting a one that you haven't owned from new, but that totally depends on the person. You're probably going to see less of these on wrists.
Yeah.
Especially if, like he says, it's in really good condition because it's just come back from a Rolex service.
I think that's cool as well.
Yeah.
I think it just depends.
I think for me, I really like the charm of the pre-ceramic GMT Master. I would probably stick with that one, but that's just my opinion.
I think you see an awful lot of steel Submariner dates, but at the same time, they're probably between £1,000 and £2,000 less than they have been over the last 18 months. Probably similar to that.
Right then, John, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man buying watches all day, every day. So if you're looking to sell a watch, get in contact with John at Watch Trader.
Yeah.
He'll always look after you. And if you enjoyed this video, please drop it a like and consider subscribing, and we will see you in the next one.
Thank you.